the people of sake actually brought me into sake.
Back in 1988, this place was actually in Ginza on the main drag.
At first it was kind of soy sauce, it was miso.
To the point where it actually changed my life.
New Year's Day 1989.
Not just sake as a beverage, but all the culture and history.
Welcome. You are once again listening to a brand new episode of Sake on Air, the world's one and only podcast dedicated to sake, shochu, and let us not forget, aomori. My name is Justin Potts, one of your regular hosts here on the show, and we are broadcasting, as always, from the Japan Sake and Shochu Information Center in Tokyo. This week, we've got the start of a mini-series, if you will, and it's something of a little bit of a different formula. One of the most commonly requested episodes or interviews has been with the host of the show. When we started the show about a year ago, we just kind of had to hit the ground running and never really got a proper opportunity to introduce our listeners to the people behind the podcast. We thought that it was about time we gave each of our regular hosts here on the show a little bit of time to talk about sake and shochu and Japanese beverages in general, but also a little bit about their background and their motivations and how they ended up here and the things that really have them excited for being involved in the industry here and now. So over the next couple of months, we're going to be sprinkling these episodes in between, and each of these episodes will contain 2 interviews from one of our regular hosts or production staff. Our first 2 guests, or hosts, depending on how you look at it, will be Christopher Pellegrini, as well as Mr. Sebastian Lemoine. As opposed to me telling you all about these talented and dedicated gentlemen, I figure we might as well just go ahead and get on with the show. First up, we have Christopher Hughes interviewing Christopher Pellegrini.
Hello, my name is Chris Hughes, and I'm here with the other Chris, and I'm going to be interviewing the other Chris about kind of, what makes him, floats his boat as far as shochu is concerned, and why did he get into shochu, and why did he come to Japan, and what was his first time he came to Japan, etc.
Christopher Pellegrini here, just here to field some softball questions, I hope, about my background and my origin story. Let's get started.
I guess I'd start off with, Chris, what first brought you to this lovely island?
You know what? And this is 100% honest. It was not my idea. It was my girlfriend's idea to come here in the first place. She was a true Japanophile from a long ways back. Worked at the Japanese consulate in Busan. She had extensive and rather impressive credentials as a Japanese speaker. She's self-taught 100%. And she just really wanted to come and live here for a year. We were dating we had met in a small city called Masan in South Korea. And I thought, you know what? I would love to see how you operate outside of your comfort zone. You know, me being in Masan and the sore thumb that I was, I said, I would love to see how you function in a similar role. So yeah, let's go do that. And she got a working holiday visa to come and live and study in Tokyo. And I got a job just to support her and keep the lights on. She really wanted to live in Japan for a year. And 1 year became 2, and 2 became 5, and 5 became a mortgage. And now, we're almost done with year 17.
Wow.
That's how life happens sometimes, I guess.
Started with one challenge, basically.
Basically,
wow.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So during your time in Japan, at what point during those 17 years did you discover shochu, and how did you discover shochu?
It was right off the bat, nearly. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she was also working part-time just because she felt a little bit guilty because she was going to school all the time, and, I was paying for school, and then she wanted to contribute somehow. So she started working part-time. One of the places was a dry cleaners, and she used to work a pretty late shift. She used to close the shop. So I think they were done at around maybe 9 p.m. or 9:30. And I would walk towards the station to pick her up so she didn't have to walk home. Not that it was dangerous or anything, but I had just moved here and I didn't like the idea of her walking by herself in the dark on the side of the road. So I went and picked her up. And sometimes I would leave a little too early so that I could go sit at the local izakaya for a couple of drinks. It was entirely a Nihonshu ordeal. They had as far as I could tell, a pretty decent selection. And so I was kind of working my way back and forth across the shelves. And then one day, I can't remember if it was December of 2002 or January of 2003, but the guy, he must have been really bored and just wanted to mess with me a little bit. And he said, hey, today you're drinking this. And he pushed some barley shochu in front of me. And that was the beginning. I don't remember what brand it was, although I can make a pretty safe guess. It was one of the major brands, I'm sure, because it was kind of he just had some just in case. And the barley was fascinating. And then he's like, wow, you didn't hate that. Let's see if we can find something that the foreigner will hate. Imo. So sweet potato. Pushed that in front of me. Didn't hate that either. So he was like, wow, you're a weird one. And I went through, I think, 4 or 5 different drinks. I had a kokuto, I had a soba, I had the barley, I remember, and a sweet potato side by side, and I was just smitten. I was like, how are these all the same thing? And he obviously didn't speak much English, and I spoke 0 or next to 0 Japanese. And I actually went back looking for that place. It doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. I wanted to go say thank you to him in like 2008 or 2009, because once I started to learn Japanese, I was still here more than 5 years later. I wanted to go and, buy a drink for him or something. It's gone. So, bummer. But that's where I learned it. It was an old izakaya near Seibu Yagisawa Station.
Do you think if that guy hadn't have introduced shochu to you, you would be here selling Nihonshu instead? Has that ever crossed your mind?
That's an excellent question. I'm pretty sure I would have bumped into shochu at some point. But yeah, who knows how long it could have taken. And I was really quite enthralled with Nihonshu at that point after having such horrible experiences with it in the United States. And then coming here and looking at this huge spectrum of flavors and aromas and quality. So it's very possible that I could have been sucked way more deeply into that rabbit hole before I ever noticed the shochu rabbit hole. I didn't even know the word shochu up to that point. I hadn't even heard the word before. So how much longer would it have taken? That's a really interesting question. And how much further down the Nihonshu hole could I have gotten before I learned about it?
You have a great love for Nihonshu, though, don't you?
Absolutely.
And recently you've been trying to sort of study more about Nihonshu yourself. Can you?
That's right.
I've been very lucky.
Christopher Hughes, my compatriot on the mic, was actually my sensei at the WSET Level 3 Advanced Sake course last year, right?
I think it was last year.
Yeah, 2018. And fascinating course, stretched my mind in new ways, which was really, really fun. I enjoyed those 2-hour sessions. Great tastings, talking with other classmates. I love sake. Absolutely adore it. And I ended up taking that course primarily because no matter how much I talked about shochu, I was always talking about how it's similar to and different from sake, right? So it just made sense. Okay, I might as well go and get a respectable certification in the world of Nihonshu as well. And then I can say, listen, I've actually studied this. I kind of know what I'm talking about, so you can take me at my word.
How much did that widen your horizons for Nihonshu? So like, have your tastes for Nihonshu changed now after doing that course or any other type of education?
Absolutely. I mean, I did develop a much more in-depth appreciation for things with more body and more flavor, a little bit more acidity. Love me some Yamahai, and, I always knew that I enjoyed a good Daiginjo, but I think once I was able to put names on all of the different flavors and aromas and the tropical notes and everything, I actually started to go, okay, now that I know what all those things are, I'm actually less attracted to them now. I kind of want something with a bit more oomph to it, something with more character.
Right.
And I also, thankfully, much because you urged everyone to, was not to ignore Honjozo or the Aruten sake. And I definitely revisited those styles. And that was revelatory for me as well. So I'm glad that happened.
Is there such a thing as a Honjozo in the shochu world, a kind of a forgotten style, if you like?
There's no direct corollary, I would say, but there are, for instance, there's something that is quite fun. It's like Sanaburi Shochu,
I never heard of that.
Which is an old traditional style that's funky as all get out. It's like a festival shochu. It's something that people would drink on a dare in many cases. And that sort of thing is starting to become appreciated again. There's a couple of places down in Kyushu that still make it. but I don't think you can safely compare that to Honjozo, which is technically a much more modern version of Nihonshu, and Sananburi is much older, much more traditional style. But I think
what's your favorite like shochu? I think
I'm mostly a sweet potato drinker, to be honest. Okay. Yeah, I've probably got about, at last count, including the stuff that I'm sort of cellaring, I've probably got 260 different brands at home.
Oh my God.
And about 95% of those are sweet potato. They're imo. And I drink sweet potato shochu, oyuwari, mixed with hot water, even in August. I drink it year round. I love the stuff. I can't get enough of it. I really, really adore the stuff. And it's such a huge category as well, because there's about 6 dozen, sorry, let me say that again. There's about 6 dozen different varietals of sweet potato that are currently used in the sweet potato shochu industry, which accounts for, well, I don't know the exact number, but thousands of brands.
Wow.
And immense variety. So I never get bored just with that one type. I think it's the most interesting. It's the most diverse type.
And correct me if my knowledge is wrong, but sweet potato tends to be the more flavorsome, more kind of out there out of all the different types of shochu, right? So that makes sense that you're kind of gravitating now more towards those kind of more flavorsome type styles of sake.
Yeah.
How would you describe the work that you do, kind of your role in the shochu industry today? And how much has it changed since when you first started?
That's a fantastic question. It has changed so much. At first, I was just a passionate shochu advocate. And we're talking about, 2005 to 2009, I'd say. Then I got the idea of, okay, let's bring this message to bigger groups. I was doing parties and doing tastings and these sorts of things. And let's get bigger audience. So let's write a book. So I started writing a book, realized nobody was going to read the book because I was just some nerd from the United States who was geeking out about this drink that nobody had heard of. So I started studying for the Sake Service Institute's Shochu Kiki Sakeshi exam, which is all in the wrong language. And it was because of that test that I finally learned to read and write Japanese. Only because I wanted to pass a damn shochu test that I actually put in the effort to learn how to read and write. Now, of course, my kanji acumen is very heavy on this, the type of kanji that I can't use on a daily basis. It's very, very technical. It's very non-conversational. But that opened the door to being able to publish the book and be taken seriously by people. Then that led to lots of other opportunities. And now it's going in all sorts of different directions. A while ago, with my partner, Stephen Lyman, we started a shochu consulting business in New York City where we help American companies bring shochu over and we help Japanese companies prepare their products for the foreign market. And then that has grown into, now I have a bar in Fukuoka that's a shochu and awamori standing bar, which is on the side of a liquor shop that imports alcohol from around the world. So I'm part owner of a liquor shop and I'm technically an importer now. And now we're also getting into, we're starting to move stuff out of the country. So it's going in all sorts of different directions at the moment. And I think if we sat down and did this interview a year from now, it'll be an incredibly different story. So maybe that's chapter 2 or something, but
president of the Shochu Association.
Oh, geez. Who knows what's going to happen? There's so many things that are kind of up in the air at the moment. And even if 2 of them fall into place, my life is going to be completely turned upside down, which is very welcome. Also kind of scary, but looking forward to it.
What's your feeling about the future of the shochu industry? Is it bleak, positive, somewhere in between?
Domestically, not good. Internationally, nowhere to go but up. I mean, nobody has heard of these products before. When I say nobody, I mean like almost literally nobody outside of Japan. And there is, I think, going to be very slow progress over the near term. And then at some point, something's going to flip and there's going to be a very large momentum, a very big snowball of interest headed back in this direction. And that's going to be a huge opportunity for the industry. Now, if they're ready for it, and I believe they are, there's just untapped scale in a lot of these distilleries. They can triple output if need be. And I think it's going to be really exciting, but they have to be ready and they have to be willing and they have to work together, which they don't like to do. And, that's one of the big things. Anthony Moss said recently when he was in Kyushu, he said, all right, guys, you can fight like cats in a bag when you're in your home territory, but overseas, everybody has to be in lockstep. You all have to praise each other. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You can't be fighting, to get advantage over somebody else in a market that's that open. Everybody has to be singing with the same voice. And that's going to be a challenge. I think they can do it. I think they're up for it. I think they've seen mistakes that other businesses and industries have made in the past, and I think they're smart enough to adapt to the new reality. But I see the opportunity for the shochu and the awamori industry purely in an international context. I think it's 100% there. These products have to go and find new homes, and they have to go and educate new consumers, and it has to start as soon as possible.
How did this TV work start? Like, how did you get into TV work? And that must be a very different thing from shochu. And sort of, are you able to bring your experiences and, that you've gained through appearing on TV back into the shochu industry in any way?
I think my long history on stage, I was a theater kid growing up and, musical actor, all sorts of, just was always on stage. And I think that's fortunately what helped me to stick with it after leaving the United States. Not a lot of stage opportunities here. It's all been small screen and big screen. But I think that training as a child and growing up absolutely helps me with one of my real passions, which is talking about these drinks in front of a large audience. Nothing makes me happier, really. I am never more satisfied than when I'm in front of an audience talking about these things that I'm very, very excited about and sharing that excitement with people. So yes, I think that really helps me, especially in terms of confidence. And then I also have to credit my education background. I think it's really helped me in terms of reading an audience and figuring out what's working and what's not working, and changing directions very quickly, making fast decisions while I'm trying to entertain people.
Improvisation. Yeah,
exactly.
How much of that TV work has been shochu related, and sort of how much of it?
Very little. Most of it's been, movies and television shows and TV commercials and that sort of thing. I've done a couple of interviews on TV. One was with Rebecca Wilson-Lai, one of our co-hosts, and another one was with Mark Matsumoto, who also does a lot of work with the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association. But that's about it. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot else. And the most recent time that I was on TV was with CNN. I was talking about baseball. So, it's just...
Oh, that's right, because you had a little bit of a foray with
I do. I've got a baseball website, the TokyoSwallows.com. I'm a huge fan of the Swallows. And so, I have a podcast that comes out once a month for the Swallows, the Tokyo Swallows podcast, where we just talk junk about that.
That's pretty niche,
sad team. Oh yes, it's about as niche as you can go. Yeah, I'm big into sports. Very excited about the Rugby World Cup and the Olympics next year. I'm wondering how we're going to be able to tie shochu, sake, awamori into that grand fiesta.
Have you set any kind of projects up yourself to take advantage of the influx of tourism?
I have not at all.
But you've been doing some seminars though, haven't you? Like some
sure.
seminars and things. So would you call them seminars? Maybe experiences would be the better word.
Yeah.
How are those going? And
it's going quite well. So you're referring to the Airbnb experiences, right?
Yeah.
So I have one experience that is strictly shochu and awamori, and then I have another one that is sake and shochu together, and that's the more popular one because people want to do as much as they can.
Right.
And it's great fun. It's so much fun. The people who sign up for these experiences are genuinely really, really interested in learning something new, and it's so easy. It's so much fun. And we have some good food, and we have some amazing drinks, and we talk about life, and we talk about how the drinks are made, and then we talk about life some more, and then we start telling funny stories, and then soon enough we've been together for, it was a 2-hour experience, but we've been hanging out for 4 hours. It's really, really satisfying. It's really fun, and Sometimes they book, sometimes they don't. I'm trying to figure out when's the best time to schedule them, but I can never figure it out. Sometimes when you don't figure we'll book, it all gets slammed with interest, and then I have to open up a second one just to accommodate the extra people that are trying to sign up. But it's a really, really great way to kind of brainwash people coming into the country on Japan's national drinks, and in a very safe setting, in a setting where they can discover as much as they want.
And what's your favorite kind of go-to side dish for pairing with shochu? Really pairs quite easily with food, doesn't it?
It pairs with just about anything. So I guess if I'm drinking sweet potato, I love like kibinago sashimi, silver stripe round herring. And it's a small fish, and they often serve fillets of it down in raw fillets of it in Kagoshima. I love meat on sticks. Meat on sticks, always satisfying, along with kushi, and yeah. I am a big fan of. Yeah, this sounds crazy, but I don't know why it works for me anyway. But I always love a nice glass of awamori with some lasagna. And it just, the funkiness in the awamori just goes with the tomato and cheese, and it's just, I don't know why it works for me every time.
Completely non-shochu related, but
Sure.
How often do you go home? And where is your home? And, how much do you travel overseas?
So I'm a Vermont kid, and I grew up in a town called Bristol, Vermont, town of 2,000 people. My dad was a, education administrator, going from principal of the local, the local high school to all the way up to the executive director of the Vermont Principals Association before he unfortunately passed away. My mother is a deacon in the Episcopal Church. Two upstanding individuals. So I was the oldest, so I had a rather restricted upbringing. I was the test child, and I made sure to kick the boundaries whenever I could get near them. Made my little brother and my little sister's life a lot easier, I think. They thanked me for that in the past. And, I was the type of kid who was very well behaved because, my father was a principal, my mother's a deacon. And also reasonably good in school, overachiever in just about everything he undertook, and then also kind of one of the kids who, when you weren't looking, was going to do something like, brew beer at home when his parents were at church, So that's kind of me encapsulated right there. And I went to, Mount Abraham Union Junior and Senior High School, same friends for 6 years. Ended up in Ohio at Wittenberg University after that, where I did a degree in Spanish, which has served me incredibly well in Japan. And then, just needed to get out and started traveling the world a bit. I go back to Vermont. I actually, until last year, I was only going back about once every year and a half. And then last year, boom, 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 3 times in 1 year. And one time was on purpose. And then 2 times were lucky, business related things where I was able to skirt up to Vermont from New York a couple of times. And I think that's going to happen a lot more frequently in the future as the overseas exploits continue and as they evolve. I think that the international travel is going to ramp up very shortly. I have not traveled that much this year. I've only gone overseas maybe 3 times so far this year, but I think from September on, I bet it'll be twice a month.
What new overseas emerging markets are you really excited about right now?
I'm really excited about North America at the moment. And then Europe is also really exciting too. And it's exciting because there are people there that are creating their own markets. It's really just individuals who, and they always start with sake. They actually created the sake market in this particular city. And then they are like, okay, what else is new from Japan? And then they want to get into shochu, inevitably. They want to get into awamori. They can't get into whiskey because there's none left. So it automatically falls to, okay, I heard, bartenders are starting to ask about this and we don't have any. What can you tell me? So that's the opening. I think that's going to introduce a lot of people to these brands, to this whole part of Japanese culinary society culture that people are just not aware of yet. And it starts with, in many cases, these restaurateurs, these bartenders, these beverage program managers who are like, that just, it's Japanese. It must have the quality. And it sounds like it has the history too. We want it. And I think that's going to become more and more the thing over the next couple of years, especially.
Cool.
Yeah.
Have you got any experience working in a shochu distillery?
I do, yes. Yeah. I have the habit of every fall going down to help a couple of my friends in particular who are very small, very micro outfits. They tend to be shorthanded on any given day. And they love having another unbroken back in the facility to mix things and haul things and clean things and de-bruise potatoes with a butcher knife and all sorts of stuff. So I do go down, wreck my shoulders and my neck and my back about once a fall. Yeah, and it's great. It's so much fun. Some of my favorite times during the year are during the tea break. And it's, you've been working your butt off all morning, and then everybody sits down for tea on crates, right? Grandma brings out tea, and then everybody sits there, and we have what are those? Last year we had, what are those grasshoppers that are covered in like a candied syrup? Inago, yeah. And then there's a little thing at Inago, and it's kind of like they just assume that, well, like half of the kurabito won't even touch them. And I'm like, tastes like candy, right? So
they eat insects in Japan, right?
Yep,
that's a fact.
It is. Oh, it definitely is a fact. Yes, they waste not, want not.
That kind of answers the question I was going to ask. What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten in Japan? I think
the weirdest thing I've ever eaten, and one of the only types of Japanese food that I do not really care for, is kusaya. And kusaya is the stank nastiest fish dish you've ever come across. It's a fish that's fermented in its own guts. And it reeks to high heaven. You can smell it from a mile away. And people from around the world maybe have been exposed to natto. And that first moment of smelling natto, if you're not accustomed to that type of fermented bean smell, that's an eye-opener. It's a bracing aroma. And I'm sorry, kusaya just is 1,000 times that. It's unbelievable. And it's pretty much the only thing that I will say, yeah, you know what, I'd rather not. And I'll try anything once. Pretty much. When I like the live squid that I used to eat in Korea, it's not live, it's been chopped up, but it's still writhing on the plate. You only need one chopstick to pick it up because it'll suck right on. And it's really nice, actually, with a little bit of sesame oil.
Oh, yeah,
but you got to chew it really well because those things will latch onto the side of your esophagus on the way down. And then it's not very easy to either breathe or win that battle.
Wow.
I'm game for just about anything. But kusaya, I've tried it. I know how they make it. I don't really want to do that again. Another thing I don't really like is I'm not a huge fan of skate. I don't really like A.
Oh, yeah.
Because those things pee through their entire body, and they're fermented. It's ammonia.
It's ammonia,
like,
really.
Geez,
it smells like that sort of hair products that you get. The women often use to color their hair, and guys as well, probably.
Yeah.
It's really.
That's another one that cognitively I can't really get past. I can't forgive.
But it goes well with shochu, though.
Yeah.
That's what you always get
I'll
told.
recommend
when
it
you say you don't like something, people always tell you it goes really well with sake.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah, that might do.
It might, but
like it.
You know what else goes really well with shochu? Shochu.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just do shochu if the alternative is skate.
So, Chris, what about ways to drink shochu? Have you discovered any new ways to drink shochu that you think really have a potential for the future?
One thing that Tekkan Wakamatsu does, he's the toji behind Yamato Zakura. He at events brings this little apparatus that he'll hook up to a CO2 canister, a big bombe, and he it fits onto it's like a little tube that goes through a pet bottle cap. And he puts some shochu in a pet bottle, screws on the cap, lightly starts the CO2, and he force carbonates the shochu. He just stands there. He'll be talking about he tells fascinating stories. Just be shaking this bottle like this, and just lightly back and forth like that. And he's just force carbonating the shochu. Then he takes it out of there, pours it in a glass, and you've got a nice sparkling shochu that
Fantastic.
didn't use any sugar to get sparkling. He force carbonated it in a pet bottle. And I think that that's a really fun, relatively recent way to add life to a shochu, especially for summer, and create new spritzers. You would be able to maintain a lot of the flavor of the shochu itself without, diluting that with soda water or obviously you're probably going to want to put it on ice, but you don't have to. If you've got a chilled bottle, that could be good. And he does that quite often with his beni imo, his purple imo sweet potato. And that stuff is so lovely anyway. You add bubbles to it. It's like grape soda. It's amazing.
All right. So Chris, we'll maybe end this with a bucket list, okay? Maybe things you want to talk about on the show, things you want to do in Japan, things you want to do in the shochu industry, whatever. Give us your bucket list.
Okay. Well, one thing that I'd really like to do in Japan, something that I haven't done in Japan yet, is go skydiving. I'd love to do that a few times.
All right. Okay.
I'm a fan, and that's very easily done. It's expensive, but Western Tokyo has a couple of drop zones, so
not scared of heights.
No.
Okay.
Especially when I'm drinking.
You need to have a few to do that, wouldn't you?
In terms of things that I'd love to talk about on the show, I'm kind of. I really wish that I had been there for the glassware episode that I didn't have a chance to participate that. And I would love to do a show that's based on, pottery and the different clay traditions that are near and dear, also proximity wise, just close to the various drink traditions of Japan. And I think that we could probably do a number of shows related to that. I'm fascinated by shuki, the vessels that
shochu has its own complete
right.
line of vessels,
every region. Yeah. So I think that would be a lot of fun to talk about. I hope that we can get some potters in here, some artisans in here to share what they do. And I think that would be a lot of fun. And let's see, one other thing. I guess professionally, I would love to start to finish make my own shochu, like 100%. I do it myself. Not like, oh, okay, well, let's see, we can give the weird foreigner a couple of tanks type of thing. No, I want to go out. I want to select the sweet potatoes myself. I want to select the rice myself. I want to do all of it by myself. All decisions are mine. Most of the blood, sweat, and tears would be mine. And that would be awesome. I don't know what I would call it. If anybody has any suggestions, please send them in.
So finally, what would you say to anyone listening who's never tried shochu? Like, what would be your kind of catch line to them to sort of entice them into trying this wonderful distilled beverage?
I would say that there's a shochu for everyone. Just got to find your ingredient and then find your drinking style. So if at first you don't succeed, open your liver yet again.
Perfect. Chris, thank you very much. Been an absolute pleasure interviewing you.
Thank you, Chris.
There we go, everyone.
Now, with the first half wrapped up, we will be moving on to myself, Justin Potts, interviewing Sebastian Lemoine. Hope you enjoy. Sebastian, good evening.
Justin, great to see you.
As always. This is fun. This is a little bit of a different setup this time around. I'm not going to talk a whole lot, and I'm going to let you do a lot of the talking here this evening because I think that all of our listeners deserve to hear more about you and your experiences.
What do you want to know about?
You'll be surprised. You and I have been friends, colleagues, or worked together in different capacities over the years.
Do you remember the first time when we met?
Yeah,
at Lemoine?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're in the difficult position of being the representative of an entire nation of peoples and all of their thoughts, feelings, and opinions surrounding a specific beverage on the show. And so I thought all of our listeners should know a little bit more about where it is you're coming from. And your background is a little bit unique. It's a little bit different, both personally and professionally, from everybody else here on the show. And so I just kind of, to start things off, tell everybody where you're from and a little bit about your path to Japan.
Sure. So I'm from France. Everyone knows that now. I was born in Normandy. And Normandy is a place which has, I think, great gastronomy. It's not known for its chefs too much. Actually, I don't know of a 3-star restaurant in Normandy. Haven't been to any for sure. But it's known for the quality of its produce. And I guess that played an important role in my education. And
was food a part of your education growing up, or was that just something that was a part of your daily life?
It's funny. I don't have that many memories from my childhood, I would say, compared to other people maybe. But a lot of these memories are associated with food. With my grandfather cooking food, with my going with my mother on the market to buy food, and cheese in particular. I am really fascinated by what the world of cheese has to offer. And yeah, I mean, my professional path was very far from food until recent years, but I had this dream of opening a cheese lab or a cheese shop in a distant future. I don't know. Who knows? Still have time.
Yeah, still plenty of time.
But to answer your question, cheese did not bring me to Japan for sure. I mean, especially the first time when I came to Japan, the only cheese that was available here was camembert in cans, and possibly some Danish blue in plastic wrapping, but not much more than that. What brought me to Japan the first time was sort of a pretty rational decision. That was in the late 80s. I was studying business and finance. These are times when you had commercial wars between Japan and the rest of the world, the US, in Europe. And I said, well, you have to know your enemy. And it happened that I had this internship at Michelin, the tire maker, and they were introducing quality circles and Kanban, just-in-time management. And I said, I want to know more. So that's what brought me into Japan the first time.
You were working in related field at the time?
When I came to Japan the first time, I was a student. Okay. I was a student. I had finished my first year at my business school. And I was learning Japanese as a language, but as a third language. So it was definitely not that major. But I came as a student. And you know, in the French education system, you do internships. So my knowledge of the business world was limited to these internships.
Why were you studying Japanese?
Very few people know about that. A girlfriend. I didn't have a strong attraction for the culture, the manga, the anime, or the literature. Definitely. I mean, I had read Mishima quite a bit, but I had no fascination for the country.
But there was an encounter that we won't dig into it, but there was you had a motivation to learn Japanese, and so you had a little bit of background experience with the language, and so you came. It was an internship, so it was just for a matter of months, or
yes, that's right.
Okay,
I stayed 2 months in Japan for the first time, so learning the language, visiting industrial sites, and traveling. One of my best memories was this travel through Japan, and it played a very important role for the rest of my stays here. I'm using the plural because I've come and gone many times since that first visit. I was not in Tokyo. in Fukuoka, and Fukuoka in '87 was sort of far away from Normandy, and my language abilities were limited, but I remember renting a car with friends and decided that we wanted to go through the countryside and visit a few sites. I mean, we just had not imagined how tough it would be just to find directions. I mean, Japan is a mountainous country. The map is not easy to read. There were no road signs in English language at that time, and we got lost. We got lost so many times. I mean, I remember one evening in particular where desperate we ended up in a love hotel with our friends, with my friends, because that was the only thing that seemed open with lights on. I mean, for
distinguish at the time.
Yeah, I mean, for listeners who wouldn't know, a love hotel is a place for legitimate or illegitimate couples where they can spend some good time together. Yeah. For a few hours.
By the hour.
More. Yeah, by the hour. And well, where it influenced my travel, my life in Japan from there on is I just love visiting Japanese countryside. Going around, getting lost, entering the doors that look open. That's what I love doing.
And so then you were there for a few months, but you had opportunities to come back from there. You said you went back and forth.
That's
for a
right.
while.
I mean, I was here in '87, and since that year, I've come to Japan at least once a year. But I live here in '89, then I live here in the early '90s, and I was back in 2007. Now, I mean, sake is an important part of my life, but at that time I had a very different orientation, professional orientation. I was a banker, I was a financier, a financial product specialist, and my job or my employers took me from Japan to Hong Kong, London, Paris, back to Tokyo. So that had been my career.
And so through your career, and you just had opportunities to come back and spend stints in Japan.
That's right. Another factor was my marriage, because I married my Japanese wife in '95. So of course I wanted to enjoy Japan and offer to my children an opportunity to know their country.
So you being in Japan and working in sake and doing those things now, were there any events specifically along the way in that back and forth that sort of helped guide you down this path? Or
my interest for sake came relatively late. Maybe I can come back to that later on. What dragged me into sake is what it offered me in terms of looking at Japan through a different angle, in terms of culture, spirituality, history, and it fed my passion for travel. From having at least 3 destinations, or let's say 2 destinations every day when I was traveling through the country, which is 1, a onsen, and 2, a spiritual place, a shrine or a Buddhist temple. I added a 3rd one, which was visiting a sake brewery every day. Now, I did not decide that from one day to the next. I had the chance to participate to a sake tasting organized by Mr. Sakurai, which is the owner of the Dasai brand. And that's the first time when I heard the story of sake, and that I thought for myself, there's something to learn from that. And there is a fascinating world that I had not seen, that I had not that I ignored for too many years. Another person who played an important role in my discovery of sake is John Gardner. I was lucky enough to meet John relatively early in my sake discovery, but beyond that, John was the first person that put a lot of information about sake in the open space. As a journalist writing for Japan Times, I think, and others, and as a blogger, of course, and as a teacher, as an educator.
And so you spent, a number of years in banking and finance and doing that, and obviously having brushes with Japanese local food and gastronomy and experiences along that. Were there any that made you go, wow, if I could manage to find a way to spend more time doing this, or to really delve into this more, was there anything?
Yeah, of course, there was an important moment for my life, and it was for I would say many people in the world, is the Lehman Shock. And the Lehman Shock was a trauma for industry, and forced me to take a step back and think about what I really wanted to do. And a few years later, I had my midlife crisis when I was 45, basically. And that's when I decided that I wanted to change my life. And my professional life, at least. And of course, my personal life as well, because I went for my passion. I wouldn't say here that my passion was sake, but my passion was sharing the inspiration that I had been receiving from Japan for so many years. I'm coming from a country which has a deep history and culture. I've been living in a country that have a similarly deep and long history and culture. And of course, there are still very clear differences between us and them, between people, between the way people live their life, react to certain situations and things like that. And that developed tolerance, but that proved really inspiring. And that inspiration I wanted to share. And because I was inspired by the stories of sake brewers, by the stories I was discovering when visiting these breweries, or reading about some of the stories, or participating to John's courses, I made sake one of the main pillars of this new professional life.
You talk about this sort of intangible thing that Japan has sort of contributed to your life that you wanted to share with others, and sake being, say, a pillar of that. But what is it? What is that? How do you define that for yourself, at least? Maybe
because I am not Japanese, and for those who learn the Japanese language, you will understand what I'm saying. I'm a gaijin, gaigokujin, someone from another country, but fundamentally somebody from the outside, and I'll always be an outsider, somebody from the outside. Just living here and being confronted to this culture has helped me to find myself, probably. I mean, that's this intangible thing you're talking about. That's what comes to my mind now.
And then you decided to step away from the world of banking, of finance, and you are now in a number of capacities, taking that and creating in different forms, experiences and forms of education and things for lots of really interesting people or groups, and just really, 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 really exciting experiences. Would you tell a little about sort of what's keeping you busy nowadays, and sort of what you're working on?
So soon after I left banking, I created a project that I called Passerelle. Passerelle is now a company. Passerelle is a French word that means that I would translate in English by footbridge or connector, and in Japanese kakehashi. So it's basically making a connection. And I try to connect my client with Japanese culture or the inspiration I find in Japanese culture. So sake, as I said, is an important pillar of that. So I am a sake educator in the sense that I've been consulting and working with Le Cordon Bleu for a number of years now, and I designed and wrote their sake basic course, and I'm teaching that course over there, and I'm hosting sake events for them. I'm holding private or public events about sake with the French expat or the foreign expat community here, and always very happy to see some Japanese people coming along as well, to learn about their own culture, or at least to understand how a French person sees their culture, which I always thought was an important factor in their interest for it. But some of my clients are corporations as well, and I try to bring cultural content to events or seminars that they are holding here. Last but not least, I'm a consultant. So whom I am consulting for? I'm trying to support regions, prefectures or cities who are trying to who wish to define better what is attractive about them and what could be done to bring more foreigners into the cities. What should we offer to them? And again, that topic is of interest to you, and I'm sure it is. We can expand later on. And I'm consulting for the sake industry as well, not Japanese breweries or exporters. I stay away from the sake trade or the trade of sake, but I'm consulting for foreign brands or companies who have an interest in the world of sake, and that recently led me to discovering a really fascinating new angle to the world of sake brewing. There's a brand called Heaven Sake. Heaven Sake is a European brand proposing under the label premium sake that is sourced from Japan, but it's not only the rebottling of an existing sake. That sake has a little bit of artistry in it, and definitely a lot of experience. There is a very interesting character named Régis Camus, who was the former maître de cave or maître de chai of Piperetic Champagne, and had this experience of traveling to Tokyo with Régis and visiting Masuda Tokubei-san in Tsuki Katsura, for those who know the brand, and doing there a sake blending exercise, which was trying to extract something new, something unique from an existing range of products which individually are beautiful already. Whereas I define myself as a wine and champagne lover and definitely drinker, I had never had that opportunity or exposure to blending in the champagne world, and I discovered it in the sake world, and it was a revelation because I was not convinced that adding 2 or 3 or 5% of a particular sake into a blend of 2 or 3 other sake would add something, but I promise it does. And since then, I have had the opportunity to work for another brand, which is releasing similarly a sake that is the result of a blend. And so this time I was on the production side, I would say, trying to support the guys with my opinion about the blend itself, and I loved it.
Fantastic. So in a way, you're shaping the nature of sake that is uniquely international, but crafted in Japan in a way. Like that's really fascinating. That's really fascinating.
But at the same time, few people know. I mean, we've mentioned it in our program quite a few times, but few people know that blending is part of the sake culture. That brewers are blending different tanks to make a certain product, to adjust the taste, or to create a new taste. They are blending vintages in a similar way, and it's just not highlighted or explained.
Are there any other sort of facets of sake or the sake industry that you found particularly fascinating, or that are of particular interest to you, that you feel like maybe don't get enough attention, or things that are sort of pet projects, or things that you're looking to communicate through your work, or that you're, aside from your cheese operation?
My cheese operation. Throughout my time in Japan, I developed different passions for fields of the Japanese culture, and I managed to. I've ended up understanding why I selected them, and the first one is aritayaki, or imari ware, porcelain. The second one was ukiyo-e, so woodblock printing, and the third one is gastronomy and sake. The common theme for me between the first two, and we'll come to the third one afterwards, is that to develop these arts took some influence from the outside world. China, Korea, for porcelain, definitely. Dutch painting and perspective for woodblock printing in the 17th century when the market opened a little bit. But in both examples, Japanese craft people, craftsmen, took these influences and developed a unique and extremely advanced form of art and craft. And again, in Japanese aesthetics, we don't have that distinction between art and craft as we do in the Western world. And to the point where they ended up having a tremendous influence on our world, on our culture. Japanese porcelain invaded the houses of nobility and wealthy merchants in Western Europe, crafted the ceramics industry in Western Europe, Meissen, Sèvres, Chelsea, Bayeux, where I come from. Woodblock print is at the origin of Impressionism, Japonism, Art Nouveau, Art Deco. So, what about Japanese gastronomy and sake in particular? Well, many things to say, but already I hint in part of it. I see how sake today inspires others, inspires winemakers or makers of spirits to do new products. And actually, I'd like to bring into our program later on this year two gentlemen who were both had an important part of their professional life at Mouton Rothschild. Who doesn't know Mouton Rothschild? And are both involved with sake from very different angles today. So that would be an illustration of what I'm talking about now. So sake is influencing the Western world, and I think it will influence our gastronomy and our way of pairing food in the future. So that's one thing. And before that, for me, again, I'm using that word a lot, but I am fascinated by how sake brewers are everything I loved about potters and woodblock print makers. So using tradition as their basis, as their foundations, but especially over the last few years, being extremely innovative, revisiting their past, their tradition, but inventing a new one, and how this leads to this great product diversity that we see today. So to answer your question, what I'm saying here is understanding or learning about sake goes well beyond learning or discovering a beverage. It's a culture that I want to inspire people with.
Any particular, say, brewery visits that you have, or visits to producers or certain areas that have left a particular impression on you, that have shaped the types of stories that you like to tell? I'm sure there are many, but
yeah, that's the right answer. There are many. I think we were discussing this with Chris at some point, but what's really amazing is the diversity of styles and these small unique differences that you see between all the breweries, and the sum of these moments where you just tell yourself in Japanese, naruhodo. I mean, that's what I mean. This is there, and now you understand, and now you connect. Is the sum of these small moments that makes the experience valuable. I mean, there is one brewery that I go more often than others, and very, very often you're there to welcome me, Justin. It's Kido Izumi in Chiba, which is I think you would agree with that, and you will agree with that. A modest brewery in Chiba that is trying to find its way, but with a very unique and distinct style. I mean, what is really remarkable, for example, is that they appeal to consumers without marketing any ginjo products. Oh, that's a bit of a change, and they appeal to consumers with these unique products I was talking about. And here I need to connect with what I was talking about earlier in terms of my activity. When I do events for foreigners, I never fail introducing sake that I feel wine lovers can understand better, and we can argue about it at the right thing to do. We had the discussion with John, but that's what I'm doing, because I think I want people to be able to relate to what they're drinking in a way. And very often, AFS, which is a Kido Izumi product, is part of my selection.
it's hard to for me to comment on it because I'm so personally like attached to it that I try and keep my perspective and stuff out of it to remain neutral.
I mean, we're not. I'm not trying to be a promotional here. I mean, it's just
No, totally.
one example.
Absolutely.
And there are many of them.
Absolutely. And you do, but I mean, you do all kinds of experiences for people all around Japan that aren't sake related. You travel to anywhere and everywhere, it seems. I know you visit Nara a lot. You go to a lot of different places. What for people, say, who are coming to Japan for maybe the first time or who have been here several times, who are looking for neat experience, what sort of experiences, just based on the things that you've seen and the things that you like to share, do you recommend to people?
I think if your timing is right, well, let's put it differently. Before you set your dates coming to Japan, try to find out if there isn't a sake festival somewhere that you can participate to. This can be the Aoyama Sake Flea, where we did some interviews earlier this year and last year, and we'll be back at the next edition. But this can be a Nomi Haruki, which is a walk and drink event in a sake producing region. And one example comes to my mind is Suwa in Nagano. You have to imagine a single road where over a strip of about how many meters there are? Maybe 400? Not much more. You have 7 breweries that are welcoming you with their own products. You travel with your sake cup, basically, and taste what they have on offer for you on that day. Not only you learn a lot about the sake and the culture, but it's a very funny encounter with locals, and be sure you'll make friends. So I'm talking about Suwa in Nagano, and the Nomi Haruki is in March, in October, but you have Shoujo in Hiroshima, you have Sake no Jin in Niigata, which is a slightly different event, but all of these occasions are good. I mean, of course, I should mention Kyoto. Everyone is going to Kyoto for good reasons, but few people spend the time in Fushimi and visit sake breweries there.
You focused on sort of experiences, these local experiences, and you were mentioning before that you do a bit of sort of consulting work as well too for different local areas in those regions and helping them communicate the value and what sort of makes that region special, in particular to people who are visiting from overseas. What do you find to be sort of the challenges in helping them understand that, and what are sort of the untapped areas that you see for
I am not exactly sure why that's the case. However, I very often am surprised by the lack of confidence that Japanese people have about what they have to offer, about the value of what they're proposing in terms of landscape or gastronomy, products, or experiences. And that's where I think as a foreigner, with my foreign eyes, I can help. And they find confidence in the fact that I, a foreigner, but it's you as well, and everyone that plays a similar role, tell them about what I like about them. Now, I mean, my experience of traveling into Japan is that I have never been disappointed. Like in regions where there is very little information available before I go, I've always found lots of places to go to with the help of a local, of course, sometimes, who tells me, well, maybe we should go there or there. So the the countryside in particular, has a lot to offer, but where the country is still struggling often is to propose a way to connect these various dots, with an infrastructure or a system. Talking about information and transportation and complementarity. And here I have to just draw from my experience, well, limited, but my experience in wine tourism in Europe, in Spain, in Italy, and in France, and seeing how France has put together and really I call it an ecosystem around wine tourism, offering so many experiences around wine or wine culture or gastronomy, but like linking all these the people will have a role to play, and that includes transportation companies and hotels and bicycle rental companies into a system which is interconnected. And here I think sake breweries have a role to play as well, because sake breweries are probably less obvious places to visit today, and it's not always easy to push the doors open. But they are institutions. They've always been there, or they've been there for many generations, and in itself, it's an attractive point already. And they are connected with their local environment a lot, and agriculture more and more. So that's as well is an area where I think they have a bigger role to play. And I never fail when I do monitor tours, when I take people to such countries to visit a sake brewery during the day.
And the response is generally very positive.
Yeah, of course.
Couple just quick questions before we kind of wrap up here. What's your go-to food? Kind of your desert island, something to snack on with sake. If you had to pick one thing.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, what I love is a namazake junmai with a grilled sanma fish in October or early November. So sanma, who those who don't know, is a gray fish. It's a long fish, relatively thin, and it's born around Shikoku, and the alvins, is that right, are carried with the kuroshio, which is the black currant up north, far above Hokkaido, and the fish feeds over there, and in autumn is coming back alongside the coast using different currents, and that's where it's caught traditionally, and it had a lot of plankton to feed on for many months during summertime, and it comes back. It's fat. It's tasty, and you just put it in the grill, and you prepare some grated white radish, just one drop of soy sauce, not more than that, and you serve yourself a good glass of namazake, and it's paradise.
I do not disagree. Now I'm hungry. That was beautiful. Sebastian, thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin.
That was fun.
Hope I didn't get too carried away.
That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. That was exactly what we were looking for. Nice work, sir. And that's a wrap for one more episode of Sake on Air. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us by mailing us at questions@sakeonair.com. Or if you take a peek at our brand new website and go to the contact page, that's a really quick and easy way to get in touch with us as well. If you like what you hear on the show, we would love it if you'd tell a friend. but almost as good would be to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast streaming service that you enjoy Sake on Air on the most. Those reviews go such a long way to really helping us be able to expand and share the show, and to be honest, it's going to be really, really crucial in helping us be able to continue the show in the long term. So if you have a few minutes in your day and wouldn't mind sharing a few words and tacking a few stars onto a review, it would really mean a whole lot to the team. You can follow us on your social media of choice at Sake on Air, and we've got a YouTube channel started. Feel free to check us out there as well. This and all episodes of Sake on Air are brought to you with the fantastic support of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association and broadcast from the Japan Sake and Shochu Information Center in Tokyo. As always, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will be back in another 2 weeks with a brand new episode of Sake on Air. Kanpai!